Hold on. Didn't do it. Well, that just about shows how our Monday morning is going. I was not going live, and then I said, hold on, it's not doing it. And of course, it went live. Hi, I'm Ann Brennan. This is ASMM, Digital Small Business Connections, and we are the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. My goal each and every week is to give you something you can take away and put to work in your business. I say this because honestly, I am learning every single day. Personally, I feel like I am constantly on a learning mission. And I've got some exciting news I was going to share with you today. We are going to be a part of, ASMM is going to be a part of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 business program. We're starting next Monday. I'm really, really excited about it. As soon as we get to go off air next week, I start a 12-week journey, about 30 hours a week of learning through this program. I'm really excited because as much as I love sharing what I'm learning here with you, and I love sharing what our entrepreneurs are sharing with you, I know there is more and I need to do a deeper dive personally. So it's a very exciting time for us. I want to remind you, my kids still think I am a nerd because I still have not hit 1,000 viewers, 1,000 subscribers. I've got way more than 1,000 viewers, but 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So take a minute, go over and subscribe, youtube.com/BrennanAnnie, or subscribe wherever you are watching this or listening to this. It's really important for our small business that you help us out there. Another thing is that we are streaming live, and that means you should ask questions. We have really great guests on the show. We have experts, and they can help you understand your business better. They can help you in your business. So if you have questions, ask them. I will see them. Leave them in the comments. I will see them, and I can ask our guests directly. So today we have Dan Duckworth on the show. He's going to talk a little bit about leadership and a lot about peak performance. And if you know me, which I know you guys do after a year of doing this, you know that peak performance is important to me. So let us welcome him. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Ann. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're on. This is going to be a lot of fun. How did you pick, when you started talking about peak performance, why is it that was driving you?
Well, I think that the work that I do is I really focus on what we call changemakers. So if you think about, there's business owners, there are entrepreneurs, there are managers, there are executives. We often talk about this divide between managers and leaders, but nobody really knows what those words mean. So you get down into what is the definition of a leader? Well, a leader is someone who makes change. They produce an outcome that wouldn't have existed without their intervention, but they don't do it as an inventor or as an engineer or as a worker or a laborer. They do it by motivating other people to act. So in other words, leadership is getting people to do things that they weren't going to do. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
that the organization or the team or the family can accomplish an outcome that wasn't going to be accomplished. So leadership fundamentally is a reflection of motivation, the ability to get people to act and to do things. And then, of course, you want them to do them at their peak level, because the more they invest, the more they give, the higher they perform, the better the outcome is going to be that you're after.
Right. Right. Well, and you just said something that I found interesting. You said, so that, right? So that, because people often forget that. So that, well, why are you working hard? Why are you aiming for peak performance? Why are you trying to do better? So that we meet this particular goal, so that we accomplish this particular thing. And people forget that part. So we ask it a lot in what we do with marketing. So that what are we trying to get across here? So
yeah, I talk a lot about trophy goals in the work that we do with Changemakers, because what we've discovered in our work is that the idea of becoming a better leader does not motivate people individually to make the kinds of changes or the sacrifice or to take the risks that they need to in order to actually become a better leader. So you can sit around all day and have conversations and read books and listen to podcasts about becoming a better leader. But if there's no if there's nothing motivating you to go over, to cross the moat, to go through what we call the land of uncertainty, if there's nothing on the other end that's pulling you across, you're going to do nothing because it's too risky to take that journey.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and sometimes also we have these goals in mind that are not necessarily the ones that are going to motivate us, right? We have these goals in mind. For me, it's not about making more money. It isn't. It's fun. But I love helping my clients. But what really motivates me is the idea that I can help my employees do better in life. I can help my employees have a better outcome. So for me, everything I do is about helping them achieve more. And so you have to figure that out too. What is that goal? What is the thing you're aiming for? So, so talk a little bit about peak performance and, first of all, why it matters that you get peak performance out of yourself, but also out of your employees.
Well, I think the theory that I like to lean on for talking about peak performance is really flow theory. If you're familiar with that, this is
Mm-hmm.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He's a psychologist, and he really did a bunch of research around what is going on with people psychologically when they are performing at their highest level. And he discovered this state called flow, where he said people, they describe themselves as saying, like, everything was just flowing. Everything was just happening. I wasn't even really thinking about it. And it was like things were just coming to me and I was just doing things and I was having ideas and I was performing at levels. And it was just like this fully engaged experience. And when you think about, as a manager, as a boss, as a leader, as a parent, what you really want out of your people is for them to be in that state. Okay. So
Right.
we oftentimes, I don't do as much consulting work anymore, but when I was doing consulting work, we would go in and we'd say, okay, so what is it you want? Or if we were going to teach leadership programs to, a group of Fortune 500 managers or executives, what is it you really want out of this? What are your goals? And they would say, well, what I really want you to do is teach my people strategy. And we would say, okay, so strategy, what do you mean? Like, you want your people to do SWOT analysis? Oh yeah, SWOT analysis. Okay, so what you're really saying is you want your people to think about where your company's positioned in the market, and what the threats are, what the strengths are, and how to make corporate decisions. Are you sure you want your middle managers thinking about that? Because they're engineers or they're finance managers. And they said, no, that's not what we want. We have a whole corporate strategy team that's focused on that. Okay, so what do you mean when you say we want them to be strategic? Well, here's my real problem, they would say. I give my people work to do. They go to do it and it doesn't work out. And then they come back and they say, well, this didn't work. So what do you want us to do now? And I'm pulling my hair out because I don't have time to think for them. Okay. So now I take it down to the parenting level. When my kids do the same thing to me, I get frustrated and I say to them, as nicely as I can, I say, I need you to turn your brain on. Right?
Right.
Like, your brain is turned off. And this is what those managers are saying about their people, is like, they don't turn their brains on. Right? They literally just go do exactly what I say. And if that didn't work out, they're not thinking for themselves. So we might call this critical thinking. We might call this strategic thinking, whatever it is. But this is a reflection that they are not, it's the opposite of flow, right? Flow
Right.
is where they're fully invested. They're fully absorbed in a task. And I like to use the analogy of kayaking. So if you're kayaking, the task isn't, how do I become a better kayaker? The task is, I'm in the whitewater right now, and I have to figure out how to get from this point to that point. And there's obstacles in the way. There are factors that I don't control, but I'm going to start to focus on how to do this. And so what I do control is the way I lean in the kayak or how I turn my
Right.
paddle, right? And so you start to play with those things until all of a sudden the kayak moves through the water effortlessly. And that is a great analogy for flow. So as a leader, it's not, well, how do I motivate my people? That's also not a great question to ask. A great question to ask is, how do I get my people to really absorb themselves in this opportunity? Okay, because that's what flow is. How do I get them to
Right.
absorb themselves in this opportunity? And then what do I do that takes away from that? What
Okay.
behavior do I have that causes them to come back to me? And then you start to tweak that and you start to do a little here and do a little there. And then you start to see and learn, how are they responding to me, until all of a sudden you find that click and they're just boom, all of a sudden they're gone into a task. And here's the great thing, Anne, about us. It's not great, but like, here's the great revelation
Right.
is, we say we want our people to be independent. We say we want our people to be go-doers and to operate on their own. We say that, but we don't really mean it.
Right. Right.
Because if they fail, we know that we're going to be the ones that have to clean up the mess.
Right.
So implicitly, we are sending them signals left and right, night and day, that says, actually, even though I say you're in charge and that I empower you, I'm actually not giving you the power because
Right.
I'm afraid of what you're going to do.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I find myself saying, I want my staff to take ownership. Right. And actually,
Yep.
I have a staff full of moms, and having a staff full of moms means they all take ownership. It's just part of being a mom. You have to do that. Right. It's just part of your life. And it makes a huge difference to me. But I do know that there are times that I sit on the edge of my seat going, are they going to get it right? Is it going to be, well, a good example. I just took 6 weeks off in January for back surgery, 6 weeks out. It was terrifying. They did a wonderful job. They did a wonderful job, but it was one of the scariest moments of my life, is to know I'm going to be out for 6 weeks and there's really nothing I can do because, I have to be out. And if I do come back, I'm probably going to be a little drugged. And so I'm likely to make a lot of mistakes. So I really do have to take myself out of the picture. So yeah, I mean, it's that idea of ownership. You want it, but it is scary.
So when you were out for your back surgery, what happened? Like what happened that surprised you in terms of your people's performance?
I'm not sure that it actually surprised me. I think I knew in my heart they could do it. But if I had to say it, I think the number of people, well, some of the people who stepped up stepped up more were surprising. Some of the people, who maybe did a lot before, but suddenly were like, oh, no, I got this. You let go. I can do it. And that was a nice feeling to know that they had it. That was probably a bigger surprise. Some of it that was surprising was less about them and more about me.
Okay.
And
What do
that
you mean
once
there?
once I let go, I let go. Once I let go, I said, okay, and then I didn't think about it again. And I thought, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to have to come back and clean up a mess. They're not going to ruin my business. We've built it for 5 years. They've worked with me. Most of them have worked with me. Well, Anastasia's been here for 3, Jordan's been here for 2, Whitney's been here for just over a year, but they're all people I've known for a long time. And so I knew they weren't going to run me into the ground, right? So I really was able to let go, even though I was worried.
So this reminds me of a story. We had a manager in one of our programs. His name was Angel. He lived in Mexico, I think in Monterrey. And we would often talk about empowerment. And what does it mean to empower? It means to give away power, which we as managers don't like to do. And even though we say we do, we don't. Our body language and our actual decisions don't show that. But anyway, so we're talking about what it means to give away power. And I raised this idea that I often raise, which is what would happen to your team if you were to disappear for 2 months? Okay, so you've had this experience, whereas just disappear, health reasons, whatever, you're just gone. What would happen to them? And most managers will just get this deer in the headlights look, and they'll say they wouldn't survive. Like it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't work. Like I just couldn't. Right? Angel was one of those. He was like, "There's no way my team could survive without me." And implicitly, what we're saying is, I'm just too important. Right. The work that I do is just too important. Well, we need that from an ego perspective. We need to feel that, right? So what happens is Angel gets sick, and he has some, I don't know what the disease was, but he has some disease where he is out. Like he cannot communicate by texting. Like he is literally like nearly comatose out for 2 months. And so I saw him at our next workshop, and he told me about the story. I said, well, what happened? Did your team survive, et cetera? And he goes, you wouldn't believe this. They thrived while I was gone. And you know what the biggest aha for him was? The one that he had the least amount of trust in is the one that stepped up and became the leader of the team.
Interesting.
In his absence, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So his story is a little bit more to the extreme, but your story revealed the same phenomena, which is when we work in groups of people, we establish patterns of behavior. This is culture, heavily related to culture, but we establish patterns of behavior. We know what the expectations are, what people like to do, what they don't like to do, who's going to step into what role, et cetera, et cetera. We build that all in to our response. Right. And so when the manager is present, the people naturally don't do what they would otherwise do because it's built into their response that, oh, that's Anne's job or that's Angel's job. right?
Right.
And
Right.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, but then what that does is that creates in us a belief system of what they're capable of. Well, I've only ever seen them do this. I've never seen them do the other stuff or do what I do. So my belief becomes implicitly, unspoken, like that's what they're capable of. And then suddenly when you remove yourself, almost always you discover they were capable of so much more than we
Right.
realized. We just didn't need them to do that at the time. Now, the next question that I have for Angel and for you in those situations is, if it's true that your team can survive and maybe even thrive in your absence, what should you be spending your time doing instead of what you were doing before?
Right. And actually, good point, right? Because that's where I came back, and I don't think I was back 2 weeks before we found out that we had been accepted into this program for Goldman Sachs.
Uh-huh.
And 30 hours a week
Congratulations.
from, thank you. So 30 hours a week, though, from me means I'm going to be out a lot because I'm a mom, and our team doesn't. We have we follow Michael Hyatt a lot. We watch Michael Hyatt a lot. And Michael Hyatt talks about, 30-hour work weeks. And so that's basically what we do is a 30-hour work week. So my being out 30 hours
That's
takes
it.
me out, right? And nobody's panicking because we all know, well, we've done it before. We've done 6 weeks. And now, honestly, if I really did need something, I could call Ann, right? She's not like she's going to be drugged up and can't answer.
Yeah.
Because that was not the good answer. But yeah, so now we know, okay, we can take that time, and that means I can learn and build our business.
Let me give you another story, because it's not always like, so that's a huge blessing in disguise, right? You're 6 weeks away. You guys now walk into the Goldman Sachs era with proof positive that these people are capable, they can learn, they can grow, they can adjust, and they're going to rise to the challenge. And what that means is a new era for your business is opening up, right? So we had a woman in our program named Ramona, and she was an HR manager, over 400 people. They were going through a major reorganization. She called it the most important project in the history of HR for that company. And she had a partner who was her best friend, who suddenly left right in the middle of this project.
Oh my
She
gosh.
was
Okay.
devastated. Ramona was devastated. She said, there's no way I can accomplish this. I have 3 other staff members that have all been here less than 2 years. They don't understand this very highly complex business that was in a global Fortune 500, their 400 department unit. They don't understand this. They can't do this. And I'm ruined. Like, there's no way this can succeed. So I was talking with her at dinner one night, and I just started to talk to her about, I said, what's your default? Like, what do you feel like is the way to solve this problem? She said, I have to go hire someone. I said, okay, how long will that take to hire someone? And she said, you have a visitor.
I do. I'm so sorry. I'm going to put you on solo layout. There you go.
That's okay. I kind of enjoyed it. So she said, my default is to go hire somebody. And I said, how long will that take? She said, well, honestly, to put it out there, to recruit, to interview, to onboard, all of that stuff, we're looking at 6 months. And then it would be another year before that person could make a meaningful contribution. Sounds about right to me in my experiences. And I said, how much time do you have? She said, well, our project's due in a year. So in other words, hiring somebody wasn't an option, right? Replacing her friend wasn't an option. So I said, okay, let's start to talk now about who's on your staff. She started to walk through them all, loves them all, great people, but they are not capable of doing these other roles. They just don't have it in them, right? Well, we talked through maybe there were things she wasn't seeing in them. Like, we kind of had the same conversation that we're having right now. And she went back and she goes, okay, so maybe. So she devised this plan, and she basically said, well, if I move this person over here, and if I move this person to do this, they're both not trained in that. They've never done it before. She got this whole game plan for these 4 people. And then she went and she sat down with each of them one by one. By the way, I'm going to bring this back to peak performance. She went down and sat by each of them one by one and said, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I need from you. Can you do this? And one person said, heck yeah, I've been waiting for this. Like, I'm ready. Game on. Let's go. And she was so excited. The next person said, I don't know. Like, that is a huge leap. I've never even imagined doing that kind of work. And I don't know if I can pull that off, but I want to try. Okay. And she had a couple other different responses from these people. Long story short, She said, we accomplished in the same amount of time a heroic project that the executives were flabbergasted that we actually completed it on time and on quality with no hiccups. Well, we dealt with all the hiccups, right? With nothing major. She said, we did it with the 4 or 6 of us, however many they had. We did it with us working reasonable 8-10-hour days versus 2 of us that would have worked 16 to 18-hour days to try to pull this off. She said, not only did the work get done better, but I'm happier. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm fully in control of what's going on here. Okay. So that reflects her beliefs in her people, and the people respond to our beliefs in them.
So I love that. I have another question for you, and maybe it's a but in there.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that I do a lot is I assume that my staff wants certain things. I assume if somebody is, I said we work 30 hours a week. If somebody pushes themselves up to 40 hours a week, I assume they did it because they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget to ask. Or I assume people have a goal of moving up within the company. Whatever the case. So these assumptions aren't always true. So how do you know what would happen had she assumed those things, talked to them and found this out, and then talked to them and found out, oh, no, they really don't want to do this. Then is there something you can do to motivate people to help you get through these times?
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks about what is going on when people perform at peak performance. Here's a fundamental truth that we as leaders and managers, we just have to accept this. People only do what they want to do. Unless you physically push someone or twist their arm, like physically make them do a task, they are choosing to do it at some level. Okay. Now, why they are choosing to do it matters. If they're choosing to do it because they don't like you, and they're doing it because they feel guilted into it, and right, there's going to be friction, there's going to be tension, they're not going to throw everything into it. But if they're doing it because they feel like this is helping them fulfill their potential as a human being, okay, that's the thing. So I'm going to start to bring some theories in here. The first one is my theory, but it's also based in positive psychology and positive leadership. Okay, there's 3 universal desires, 3 universal values that are extremely they just pull extreme behaviors out of us. Okay. The first one is the desire to grow. Like that is hardwired, engineered into our DNA. We have in our own minds our own image of what we're supposed to become. Call it the perfect woman or the perfect man or whatever. Somehow in our whether it was born into us or whether it was developed through our early childhood experiences, we have this image of what is the ideal, and we're trying to grow to that. And whenever we feel like we're not accomplishing that, we feel stuck.
Right.
Okay? And we get uncomfortable, we get miserable, we feel oppressed. But whenever we feel like an activity is leading us towards self-fulfillment of that ideal, then we throw ourselves into that activity because it makes us feel good about ourselves.
Okay.
Second is we have a universal desire to contribute to others. There's a whole bunch of research around this, but the one that I cite is my own in-field research, where we do an activity where we help people sort of identify their purpose, their grand purpose in life. And 98% of the time, it comes back to, I'm here to make the world better for my family, to make the world better for my friends, to make the world better for the next generation. It's about doing something for other people. Okay. So if we give people opportunities to contribute in ways that they value, right, then that's helping them to self-actualize that ideal person. The third thing is there's a universal desire to belong. Okay. Now I'm going to caveat that, because it's not just to belong to anything. It's to belong to something special. Okay. We want to be part of that hockey team that is going to win the state championship. We want to be part of that company that is breaking, new ground in the market. We want to be part of, that that social movement that is on the cutting edge of history. So that is also hardwired into us. And so when you as a leader can tap into one or more or all of those 3 desires, people start to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do.
Okay.
And you can accomplish things you wouldn't otherwise accomplish.
Right. Okay. So go back. So desire to I'm so sorry. Desire to contribute, to belong, and
to grow,
and to grow.
or to become, we might call it.
Okay. Okay. I love that. And I think, I do a lot of reading a lot of biographies, right?
Yeah.
And you think about the people who started with Nike,
Mm-hmm.
the people who were with Phil Knight when he started, who either made no money or made very little money, or even contributed money just to work there so that they could get through because they believed something bigger was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. They
Right.
believed something was going to happen, and they believed that they were being part of something special.
Right. Right.
At that
Right.
moment. And they were also growing. They had opportunities. That's why people love to work in entrepreneurial environments. I mean, your audience is primarily, it's for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Like, the reason people love that is because they feel like they can grow and do things. This gets back to flow theory now. Okay. So just to bridge that gap, one of the principal components of flow theory is when people are operating at their highest level of capacity for a task that is just beyond their reach. In other words, they're actually being asked to do something that they're not capable of doing. Okay.
Right.
That's the
Right.
brilliance of it. We think as managers, I got to give them a job that they can do. I got to give them something that I know they'll succeed at. Well, we've instantly eliminated the possibility for flow. Instead, if you want to tap into that desire to grow, you have to put them doing something that is just beyond their reach. And then they will say, I'm going to learn how to do that. And all of a sudden they get mentally absorbed in the task and they want to do it. It could be something that, I mean, look, they didn't grow up thinking that designing new washer nuts for a vehicle transmission system was going to be their life's work. But all of a sudden there's a problem just outside of their reach. It matters to the company. It matters to the market. It matters to society, because this is how we're going to take this engine from this stage to an electrical engine or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, they're pouring all of their effort and energy into that one task that's just beyond their reach, because it's helping them grow. It's allowing them to contribute. And we're doing something special that matters for the communities that I care about, whether it's the whole world or just my neighborhood.
Right. Right. So can you do this if you've come into us, whether you're an entrepreneur or you are coming in to a position where you're looking at something where people haven't been treated that way? Can you motivate? Can you help them find that flow if they've never been treated that way and that's not the way things have set up? Can you still make those changes to do that?
Are you talking about, can a leader do that, or can I do that?
Yeah. Can a leader do that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is, I mean, you go to the research by Bernie Bass and Bruce Avolio on what is transformational leadership. And they talk about there are 4 pillars. There are 4 things that transformational leaders do. And by the way, that the word transformational has been, mutated and dissected way too many times over the last 30 years. So it doesn't mean exactly what they meant it to mean. But if you look at their original definition of transformational leadership, it's basically transforming the people that you are leading into new people, right? So they're doing things they wouldn't otherwise do. They're behaving like people that we would be kind of surprised, like, whoa, look at this person. They're going above and beyond. They're shocking me. We call this positive deviance. Like they're deviating from the norm in positive ways that are literally shattering my expectations. Okay, so this is, now you're getting to my language. Okay, I don't talk about motivation. I talk about how do you inspire people to shatter your expectations. Okay. So I want you to take your highest expectations you have for this person and say, like, oh, if this person were to do this, I would be thrilled. I would love that. I'd be so excited. I would say, like, wow, good job. You deserve a raise. And then imagine going way beyond that. Imagine sitting back in your chair and going, wow, I never saw that coming. Right. That's Angel with the guy that stepped up when he was gone, going, mind blown. Like, I still don't even believe this happened. And it disproves all of my previous theories about this person. That this is Ramona saying it's impossible for us to accomplish this project. And then she's sitting back going, I can't believe it. Right. This is Dusty in one of our programs who looked back after a year of leading change. And he said, he looked at the actual data in his company and he said, quote, the data was shocking. Okay. This is what transformational leadership yields in terms of individual peak performance. There's 4 things that the researchers show that transformational leaders do. The first is individual consideration. Okay.
Okay.
Individual consideration. And what that means is everybody feels like they are a human being to the leader, like they matter as a person. Now,
Right.
when you work in a company with 5 people and a staff of 5 people, that's way more realistic than when you work in a company where you manage 50 people, or maybe you're the department head over 500 people. And you start to say, what does that mean for people to feel like they matter to me and that I'm a coach and an advisor and I'm connected to them? Well, guess what? People do it. People do it all the time. You know, we can just look at the historical figures like Abraham Lincoln or people like that. You know, they figured out how to make a whole nation feel connected to them.
Right. Actually, I was just reading about Teddy Roosevelt, and he had been out of the White House for over a year, came back to visit, I think, Taft, if I've got my history right, and walked in, and people were surprised because he was talking to the gardener, or he was talking to the maid, he was talking, and he knew all their names and asked about their children, but he had made each one of them feel that special.
Okay, so now you're getting into culture, because Teddy Roosevelt can't talk to every gardener on the grounds. He can't talk to every federal employee. He can't talk to every American, right?
Right.
But what he can do is he can do it in ways that shatter people's expectations. And then they do exactly what Anne Brennan just did some 100 whatever years later. She tells the story. Right. So when that gardener has that experience, you know what he does? He goes home, or he goes to his colleagues and he says, guess what, Teddy Roosevelt? He just came and talked to me, and I feel like a human being. I feel like I matter to one of the most powerful people in the world. And then everybody else goes, well, if you matter to him, well, then I must matter to him. Right. And then all of a sudden the culture starts to spread. I've never met Teddy Roosevelt, but I feel connected to that guy. Right. I've never met the leader or the boss of this company, but I feel connected to that lady because I've heard stories of how she's interacted with people like me. That's what culture is.
Right. Absolutely. So, all right. So what's the second thing that transformational leaders do?
Okay. So the next one is what we call idealized influence. And that's kind of a fancy way of saying that they are magnetic. Okay. How do they become magnetic? They become magnetic by living out their ideal. Okay. So this is a really kind of a morality based thing where it's the other word we give it is moral power. Okay. So you live your message. You take the risks. This is most important. You're asking people to take risks, to be different, to do things that are uncomfortable, that require them to grow, and they might fail. And if they see you being risk averse, playing it safe, punishing failure, right, then you lose all credibility. But if they see you walking the talk, if they see you taking the risks and doing it all for the sake of the community, not for personal advantage, not for ego, but because you're investing yourself in the community, then they go, wow, if that person can do this, then I can do the same thing too. And my version of that is different because I have a different job, a different role, but I can take risks and I can sacrifice as well. Again, right? You're getting people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do by this is like modeling it, but like it's not modeling in the way that we often talk about today, because too many leaders go, I'm going to show people what it's like. And they come up with this scripted, canned approach. And that's not what it is. It's moral power. It comes from deep inside. We call these the hidden forces of leadership. Okay. This is a hidden force, moral power. You do something that makes the people go, wow, I want to do that too. Okay. And I'll give you a quick story. There's a leader that I was familiar with who had led some interesting changes, very complex, provocative changes. And in the next project, he started to lead this project. And they were in a break in one of the meetings, just kind of mingling. And one of his people came up to him and she said, very solemnly, she said, I just want you to know that last night I told my husband I would follow you to the gates of hell and back if you asked me to. And then she turned around and walked away. And he was like, okay, like number one, that's scary because, right. But number two, that's humbling. Right. But number three, that's evidence of moral power. She was basically saying, I believe in you as a person, Okay.
Right.
Now that is kind of scary because that comes with a lot of potential to lead people astray. Right.
Right.
So that's where your
Right.
value come in.
Well, this goes to where they said, I cannot remember who it was, but they asked the person at NASA who was sweeping the floors, what do you do
Yeah.
here? And he says, I'm
Lyndon
sending a man to the moon. There you go, Lyndon Johnson, right? I'm sending the man to the moon. And yeah, I mean, the moon, that sending a man to the moon was one of those times where it's like everybody who's below there was like, we're following you. This is scary. This is big, but we got it, right?
Well, and that comes to the third pillar, which is called inspirational motivation. Okay. And that's where you set people's sights on the impossible, but you make the impossible seem feasible. Right? You want it to feel impossible. You want it to feel like something we can't do unless we're special. Right? The only way we're going to accomplish this is if we're all growing, if we're all contributing, and we're doing something special together. And then even the janitor says, I'm sending a man to the moon. A related research study by researchers at the University of Michigan, which is where my home base is, where I came out of, is they were at a hospital, and they basically went to the hospital, or the hospital came to them and said, we need help. We're failing. And they said, well, show us a department where you're not failing. And they said, no, we're all failing. Like, we're all struggling. We're not. No, they said, show us the one area where it's awesome. And they said, oh, I guess there is this one unit and you can go talk to them. And so they went up to that floor and they started to talk to people on that unit. And similar thing, like the orderly who is, cleaning up the bedpans or sweeping the floors or whatever, something like that. Like, what's your job? And she says, my job is to heal patients. And they said, what do you mean? You're not a doctor. You're not a nurse. You're a janitor. And she said, no, you don't understand. When the doctors and nurses all leave, that's when the healing starts. And I'm the only one that they have to talk to. And if their place is clean, and if they're treated with respect, then they feel like a human being and they will heal faster. So my job is to make them feel human while I'm here. Whoa.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm going to say this because my surgery was at the University of Virginia's Medical Center.
Okay.
And it was amazing to me because I actually sent them a message afterwards and said, even the person who delivered my food treated me like they were taking care of me. And all they were doing is dropping my food off.
That's awesome.
So that idea it can run through everything you do. I mean, that person clearly felt that they were doing an important job because it was clear in the way they were doing it.
Yeah, it's so great to see those examples, because that brings us to the next pillar, which is called intellectual stimulation.
Okay. And
what this means is the leader is constantly challenging your fundamental beliefs about the way things are. Okay. So you and I, we have a belief system about the world, about ourselves, about the other people that we work with on a routine basis, about humans in general. And we know what is possible and what is not possible. And we can't get ourselves to do things that we think are impossible. And so a typical approach is just to say, no, this is possible and you will do it. And I'll give you $20 extra if you do it. And I'll, write you up if you don't do it. Right. So we use carrots and we use sticks to try to motivate people. But a transformational leader, the fourth pillar, is they challenge your fundamental beliefs. So they explore those with you. Like, why is it that Ramona doesn't believe that these people can actually accomplish this? You know what I mean? And so you have to challenge those beliefs in meaningful ways that get them to start to reconsider the way they view themselves, the way they view the world, the way they view the others. And then when they start to disrupt those patterns, then they might go experiment with some new behavior, because that's the whole goal, is to get them to do something they wouldn't otherwise do.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I love this. And they're all things I haven't really thought about. Again, I started my business by accident. And so I'm flying by the seat of my pants and looking and again, I read a lot. And can I do this? So how do you know if it doesn't come naturally? How do you do it? What do you do? So you're a coach. I'm guessing that the answer is you work with a coach and you say, this is what I need.
So you don't need a coach. Okay. So I do some coaching, but what I've learned over the last, so I was a change maker initially. I was inside organizations leading change as a transformational leader. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't know that this field existed. I didn't know that, definition of what leadership was or what flow theory was. I was just in there learning. And I was
Right.
saying, I have a trophy goal. Okay. So in other words, I was the youngest guy in the organization, and my CEO set out a project, and somehow I got involved in it. And I had this idea that we could not only do this project, but we could do it really awesome. It could be amazing. And not only could we accomplish the goal in amazing ways, but we could like love the experience, and we could love working with each other. Okay. So you get in there, and all of a sudden you realize that's not the way the world works. Okay. So I'm a project manager in my first job out of college, managing a very complex business project that if it failed, the business would fail, for $100 million multinational company. And I get in there as a project manager, and I don't know anything about project management. So I go to the Project Management Institute, I take the trainings, I get certified. I'm doing work breakdown structures, I'm doing Gantt charts, everything you would expect. But I know underneath that nothing I do matters, because there's some other force that's at work that is controlling the decisions and dictating the flow of events. And my work is a charade. And the more I come to terms with this, I didn't know at the time that's what culture is. Culture was in control,
Right.
not me. But I basically gave up. And I came to work one day and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't care, because nothing I do matters. And so I sat down at my desk and I literally stared at my computer and did nothing for 8 hours. My boss works right behind me, right? I'm not hiding from anybody. I'm just
Right.
like, I'm depressed. I'm stuck, like nothing. I don't know what to do. And by the way, he was part of the problem. So it's not like I could go talk to him about it.
Right.
But the great thing about that was my natural inclination is to be an observer, right? I'm a people watcher. I'm a sociology observer. We call these social anthropologists. Like that's kind of in my DNA. And so even though I quit working, I started watching, and I started asking myself questions. Why is it that people talk differently about the project when the boss is around than when he's not around? Why is it that these people keep coming into my office when the boss isn't here and talking to me about the boss? Why is it that these people talk about the project like it's actually going to fail and we're all going to be doomed? And so I started to ask questions. Now I'm not just watching, I'm exploring. I'm saying, tell me what you believe about this. Why do you believe that? I don't know anything about the business processes that we're working on. I'm a total neophyte, but I start to develop a clear understanding of the way things really work. See, my default in my head was wrong. My assumptions were wrong about the situation. And as I learned more about the situation, I realized, yeah, everybody here, 12 out of 13 people, think that this project is going to die. And one guy said, this is a train wreck and we're all going to die with it.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm asking him, why aren't you doing anything? And I said,
Right.
I'm not sticking my neck out of the line. Are you kidding me? Like, this is the boss's project. He scoped this out. This is, I'm just doing my job, And then all of a sudden one day I had the senior-most person in my office, and I really pressed her because I was fed up. And I said to her, you have to do this. And she said, why? And I said, because you're the one with the most expertise. You're the one that the boss will listen to. She said, there's no way that I'm going to do this. And then she looked at me and she said, we're all waiting for you to do it. Now, I think looking back 20 years later, I think she was being facetious. I don't think she was really expecting me to do anything. But it triggered something inside of me. And I realized that I now had the same knowledge that they had and the same belief that they had. I was just as culpable if I didn't do something. And so that led me then to start looking for opportunities to deviate from the norm. Okay, to do things that I wouldn't otherwise do things that were not expected of me, including challenging my boss in public in a meeting in creative and interesting ways. And I'll save that story for later because it's too long. But the point here is it doesn't require you to be a boss. It doesn't require you to have authority. It doesn't require you to know anything about leadership as a theory. It requires none of that. All that it requires is for you to start to observe. I call this hyper focus on your situation and start to learn ask one question. Just ask yourself, what is really going on here? If you just hyper focus on that, it will kick off a chain of events that I call Avolio's curve, because Dr. Avolio at University of Washington describes this in his research. But it will kick off a chain of events that starts with an epiphany. And the epiphany is a flash of self-awareness where you see yourself and your situation as they really are. So all of a sudden, I'm hyper-focusing on my situation, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm wrong about this person. Maybe I'm wrong about the project. Maybe I'm wrong about humans and motivation.
Right.
Therefore, I should try something different. And now you're experimenting, which is the next stage. And then you do something different and you take the data in and you say, okay, I did this differently. What results did I get? Did I like those results? Do I not like them? What did I do? How could I do it differently? And then this is called deep reflection. So now you're in this process we call the 3 keys of 3 keys of leadership transformation, which is learn for the epiphany, experiment, and then deeply reflect on your experiences. And then you just do that over and over and over again. And it becomes this flywheel. And all of a sudden you're in flow and your mind is completely absorbed by this growth opportunity. And you're like, I'm learning constantly. And my real learning challenge as a leader is the fundamental question: how do I motivate the people to do things that they're not doing?
Right. Well, and one of the things you said a lot, but one of the things you said is self-awareness, right? If you can't figure out where you are in it, if you can't figure out what's motivating you, if you can't figure out where you're the problem, then it's very hard to do anything else.
But you don't do that the way most gurus are telling you to do it these days. You don't do that by sitting in a room and closing the curtains and meditating for 3 days.
Right.
That's not what it's about. Right. It's about, I'm in the water right now. I have to figure out how to get from here to there safely, effectively, whatever the goal is. And so I need to start to do things differently. What am I doing today? Oh, I'm holding the paddle this way. What if I hold it differently?
Absolutely.
That's how you get yourself in the journey, is I've got to do this right now. So I would say to any of your listeners who can't afford a coach, because most transformational coaches are not affordable unless you work for a very large company, because they know their value and they charge $1,000 or more an hour. That's a lot of money.
Right. Exactly.
So if you're out there as a podcast listener, you're saying, how can I do this on my own? Well, the point is you need to start hyper focusing on what your situation is. And the best way to do that, there's 2 ways really, but you can write in a journal. But the best way to do that is to have a conversation with the right person who is in the right mindset, not somebody who will reinforce your current beliefs. Say, oh, you're okay, Dan. You're not that bad. Like, everything's going to be fine. It's all their fault anyway. So it's not, no, that's not the right person. The right person is someone who will act like an intellectual or like a transformational leader. They'll give you intellectual stimulation. They'll say, well, yeah, why don't you think about this differently? Or let me ask you this question. You had somebody on your show recently where you asked her, what's the difference between coaching and consulting? And she said, coaching is primarily asking questions, right? So who's that friend? Who's that person? Or you go to them and you say, look, here's the deal. I'm not looking for you to solve my problems. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give your leaders, here you go. Here, you say you want to give them a takeaway. Here's a takeaway for them. Go find somebody and say, I need an hour of your time. And I'm going to ask you to play 21 questions with me. I don't want you to respond. I don't want you to give advice. I don't want you to judge. I want you to listen to me. And then when I stop talking, I want you to ask another question. And then listen to me and then ask another question for an hour straight. Okay. I sat down with Bob Quinn. He's a professor emeritus at University of Michigan. He's also a mentor of mine. But I sat down with him and I said, Bob, this was after a workshop. We were just in the hallway. He said, Bob, I have a problem and I need you to solve it. And then we sat down in the hallway and he asked me a question and I went off. And then he sat there in silence for probably a full 60 seconds. And then he asked me a question and I went off. And then he looked up at the sky. And then he asked me another question. And that's all he did. And then at some point, you know what happened? I jumped off my chair. I said, Bob, thanks a lot. I know what I need to do. I'm out of here. And I left.
Yes, exactly.
Hadn't done anything, right? So that's what you need to find a friend who can do that for you. And that's free if you find a friend who cares about you.
Right. Well, if you surround yourself, honestly, with the right people outside of your little network, that's exactly what you find. It's one of the reasons I say network, build a group of people that is bigger and bigger and bigger so that you have that and you can go and say, what am I doing wrong? And then you can walk, you don't usually need them to tell you what you're doing wrong. You just need to ask them to ask you the right question.
I like to
Right.
say that a coach is a bad substitute for a community. Right?
Yes.
What you really want is to have a conversation with somebody who can just help you unpack. And a coach can do that, especially if they're trained, right? So I am a coach, so there is a role for coaches, but most of the time you just need a conversation with the right person, and then boom, you're ready to go. And that's a lot easier than getting into a coaching engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, before we go, I always ask, what are you reading? What's your favorite book? What should people pick up?
It's interesting you asked this question because I recently read a book that's written by a friend of mine. She's a social media influencer. Her name's Brooke Romney. And she wrote this book called I Like Me Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's got a pink cover, and it's really a book written about women and for women, and about motherhood. And there's some aspects of her personal faith journey in there. And so I was like, I'm kind of reading this just because I'm a friend and I want to support her and so forth. But as I read this book, I was riveted. Like, I found myself just totally engrossed in it. And what I realized is that this isn't a book about motherhood. This isn't a book about womanhood. This isn't a book about a faith journey. This is a book about a human being. And
Right.
she really had captured a journey, what we call the hero's journey in our work, of becoming a new person. She basically takes episodes in her life and says, here's what happened to me. Here's what I used to think about that. And now here's what I think about that and how it's changing the way I live and work today. And that's exactly what we do in our leadership work. When people join our community, when they join our virtual workshops and things like that, we take them through that same exact process of changing their stories by changing the story they tell themselves about their story. Okay.
Right.
To us, that process of personal narration is the most powerful key in the universe. And so watching Brooke do that in the book over and over and over again, I tell my people, the most powerful content isn't anything I'll ever say to you. It's nothing you'll read from Simon Sinek. It's nothing you'll read from Tim Ferriss, or you name it, whoever, Whitney Johnson, whoever your favorite influencer is. The most powerful content in the world is an authentic story in the making. When you get to go inside somebody's journey of becoming a new person, it will rivet your attention, and you won't even be thinking so much about their story as you will be thinking about your story as you're processing it through their experience. So that's
Right.
why I love that book.
Oh, it's great. And I love that you said, but I used to write a blog called Anne's Running Commentary. And my blog was all about running. It was about the mental side of it.
Ah,
And I said, it's for women who are at the time 38, who are moms, who are running. And then the more I wrote, the more I realized that it wasn't for moms. It was for anybody.
yeah.
And that's what it kept happening, is more people would call and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to go run a marathon, or I'm going to go do a triathlon because I read your posts. And I think that so often in life, we look at something and we don't pick up the pink book because we're like, that's not for me.
Yeah,
Right? That's not for me.
absolutely. And in today's polarized world, we're so busy making assumptions and judgments about people. Even when we say that we're not, we are.
We are.
And the truth is, at the fundamental level, we're just people. We're all just human beings. We're all motivated by growth, contribution, and belonging. And
Right.
and when we get down to that level, we can find ourselves in almost anybody's story, because it's a story of struggle and triumph, of pain and of joy, and of work and of overcoming. That's all of our stories.
Right. Right. Exactly. We're not that different.
We're not.
We think we're that different. We're not that different. So yeah, I really love that. I'm going to check out the book. And specifically, I'm actually one of those who would not pick up a pink book. Just because like, that's not a story for me. I'm not really that kind of woman. So, but I will pick up that book and check out Brooke Romney as well. So I appreciate you telling us that. So tell us how people find you and why they're looking for you. What are they looking for? If they're not hiring you as a coach, what are you doing at Crucible Life?
Yeah, so right now we are focused on building a community of changemakers through our virtual community. And so we have at the cruciblelife.com, we have this community where you join, you participate in conversations, we get monthly gatherings. And basically it's that what we talked about with you was, you got to find the right people in the right mindset to have the right conversation. So we're creating that opportunity for people to just join that community of change makers, because those are the right people. Not that they're better than anybody else in the world, but when you have a desire to lead change, you need to be around other people who have a desire to lead change. When you're going on a journey to become a transformational leader, there's nothing more powerful than being around other people who are telling their stories of becoming transformational leaders. And so we have that community. And then in addition, we have our, what we call our level up workshops, which are 4-week, highly intensive virtual experiences. So they're like 3-hour a week commitment, but like the high intensity part of it is you're going to shatter your story in 4 weeks. Like our goal is to infuse your personal story with so much energy that it just blows up into 1,000 pieces. And now you're moving. Now you're shaking. Now you're unstuck, right? And it might take you 6 months or a year to complete the journey that you're going to initiate, but those are designed to really get your story started. And then, of course, we don't want to leave you unsupported. So that's what the community is for, is you stay connected in the community. You keep having conversations with people, the right people in the right mindset. And you basically take yourself through an iteration of, the hero's journey.
Okay. So what I find interesting about what you're doing, about this whole thing, is that so many people, and especially my age group, are afraid. There was this whole self-absorption, right? You're self-absorbed. And it's like, maybe, I was going to say maybe not, but maybe. But if you're not, if you don't get to know who you are, and you can't tell people and define yourself that way, how do you go on to be better? You cannot get better if you don't know whether you're good enough as it is.
Yeah. So. And I always take people back to you're not going to become better and you're not going to learn about yourself until you start to go do something different. So when you experiment, so that's why everything that we do is encouraging you to go experiment in your real world, not in a laboratory, not in a role play, not in a simulation. We want you making change in your real world where there are real consequences. Why? Because that produces data for you that then you have to grapple with. Yeah, the psychologists call it sense making. You have to make sense of your new experiences. And what does this mean about me? Maybe I'm different than I thought I was. And all of a sudden the possibilities open up. That is the best way to learn about yourself, is to go, I say you can't steer a parked car. So get the car moving, and then you can learn what changes you need to make, turn left or turn right. But as long as the car is parked, it's all theoretical.
Right. Absolutely. So, well, I love that. So cruciblelife.com. Did I get that right? It's not the Crucible Life. It's cruciblelife.com.
You got it.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming. Everybody else, I want to remind you, please do subscribe. Please leave a review. If you're listening to this as a podcast, leave a review. We're a small business. It helps us out a lot, and we really appreciate that. And next week, we're going to have Courtney Durand on, and we're going to talk about why businesses fail. And it's a hard subject, but it's one that's important for us to talk about and understand. So, Dan, you stick around a minute. Everybody else, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.